Cool. All right, welcome to the show, guys. The F5 report. I am excited this morning to bring you guys one of my good buddies, a seasoned investor, expert in self-directed IRAs, and I believe Edwin's going to add a lot of value to my real estate friends, real estate investors, private lenders that watch this, or maybe if you've never even thought about some alternatives to how you can utilize your retirement funds. I know Edwin's going to bring a wealth of knowledge to the table this morning. So, Mark Evans on the line already. Edwin Kelly, welcome to the show, man. Appreciate you being on.
Yeah, what's up, Joe, man? How you doing? It's great to see you again.
Awesome. It's been a while, man.
It's been too long. I think, well, it seems like every time we bump into each other or we get together, it's always down in Florida, which actually sounds really good right about now because the weather in the Midwest is not what I prefer.
Absolutely does, man. It's been actually pretty nice here in the Northeast, but it's funny. You got chilly last night for a little bit, and I thought we were well into spring at this point, but can't complain, man. I'll tell you what, as far as being locked in the house during COVID, I think the last 6 weeks have been the nicest it's been. So pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So Edwin, tell us a little bit about tell us a little bit about your background. Tell us about what you do. I mean, tell us a little bit about specialized IRA services and how the whole thing works. I think a lot of people are confused about the whole notion. I'm sure you get this a lot, but I don't believe enough people are doing it. So I think it's something that they should learn about.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. A lot of people are under the assumption, and I'll say a misconception, that the only thing, if you have a retirement account that you can invest in, are stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and CDs. And that's what I refer to as a kind of a plain vanilla IRA. Most people have those at your typical bank or brokerage company. But the reality is, when the government wrote the rule book, back in the 70s, that we can actually do all kinds of things with our retirement accounts, such as invest in real estate, right? Lend money to other investors. So we can buy and hold real estate, buy and fix it, in a retirement account. We can lend money on a transaction or an investment to another investor if they're putting together the deal, right? There's so many things that we can do. However, to make that happen, you have to have what we call a self-directed IRA, right? And a self-directed IRA is one that is held at a custodian. So it's a different type of financial institution that allows you to actually make your own choices, right? So they don't restrict you to stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and CDs. They allow you to invest in anything that the government allows, like real estate, like private lending, right? All the cryptocurrencies, physical precious metals, all these things that are possible to invest in with your retirement account. And that's kind of where I come into the equation, right? So I am co-founder of Specialized Trust Company, and I founded the company with my business partner, Keith Marsh. And so we started that company to allow investors to get complete control of their retirement account, invest in anything that the government allows, so they can use money they've already accumulated in their retirement account. They can invest and create money and income, tax-free and tax protected. So their wealth builds exponentially faster by using retirement accounts. I mean, there's just a lot of benefits. So I've been doing this for, I'd say, 23 plus years, Joe, because I'm single. And every year, right, my marketing team says you got to update that number. But I realize now, being single, every year I updated that number. I was just aging myself. So I say I've been in the business 23 plus years. And if you and I are doing this live 10 years from now, I've got 23 plus years in the business. That number's never changing anymore. So we've been doing this for a while.
I love it, man. So and an interesting concept, I think, for a lot of people. I mean, look, is that sometimes you hear, you can self-direct and you can do real estate deals, right? Mm-hmm. What are some other things you touched on for a second, like precious metals? I think there's some interesting things, the guidelines where you can invest. People have no idea that that's possible. I mean, what are some other things outside of real estate that you can do in your self-directed?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I tell people that you can invest in virtually anything that you can imagine. But to me, the big benefit is that if you look at what made this country great, and you know what, with this whole quarantine and coronavirus thing going on, one of the things that we hear a lot about if you watch the president's press conferences and those kinds of things, is that they recognize and acknowledge that small business is the backbone of America. It's not Wall Street, it's small business. And so one of our basic philosophies is that we feel like the best deployment of funds can be to take money off Wall Street, transition that to Main Street. And that's really what people are investing in when they use their self-directed retirement account. So when I say that you can invest in things, that anything you can virtually imagine, that's subject to a few rules and regs that the government has for us. So we have to follow those rules and regs. But having said that, we see a lot of people funding businesses. In fact, I was consulting with a gentleman who owns a couple of different businesses in the Albuquerque, New Mexico market. He wanted to start a restaurant. He needed capital to do that. And so we talked through the retirement accounts and how they work. He went out and found a private investor, and that person gave him the money, lent him the money to start that new restaurant that he wanted to add to his business portfolio, right? So private equity deals, startup companies, I'll say, cryptocurrencies is something we see a lot of. I tell people, don't call me with the weed business. Okay, you can't do that. Everybody can finagle that one these days. It's like, okay, you can go smoke it. You can smoke it, but you just can't buy it in your retirement account, right? Not yet. When those rules change, we'll let you know. But until then, no. But that's one of the few restrictions, right? You can't do that. But beyond those kinds of things, we just see the creativity of people and the ingenuity of investors and entrepreneurs, right, is just amazing. I'll say that the predominant uses still of self-directed retirement accounts is primarily real estate and notes backed by or tied to in some way real estate. So we see that still dominate the landscape in self-directing, but yeah, there's all kinds of things that we help, that clients want to do inside their retirement accounts, such as cryptocurrency, such as physical precious metals, private equity deals, startup deals, all those types of things.
So walk the folks. So I look, we've done this dozens and dozens of times through your company, through sending recommendations. People want to invest in a piece of real estate. They don't know how to do it with their retirement. So, we turn them on. They inevitably roll their whatever into a self-directed IRA, depending on how you structure it. But it's a very easy process. The whole thing from start to finish is less than 2 weeks, right? So what does that look like for people that maybe have a traditional retirement account and they're like, man, it just sounds like a lot of work to be able to have this new opportunity. What does that transition process look like? Because it's a lot easier than I think most people realize.
Yeah, well, and right now is a great time to really think about taking control of your retirement account. But the process is basically 3 steps, okay? And I call it my triple D process. So the first decision is, or the first step, is the decision, right? To decide that you want to get complete control over your retirement account, that you're committed to creating wealth for yourself and your family, that you want to rescue your retirement, that you want to build that family legacy. When those are the things that you're looking to accomplish, a self-directed retirement account is one of the best ways to help you down that path. Mm-hmm. So that first step is to decide that that's what you want to do. And in that step, then you simply establish an account. It actually takes about 15 minutes to do the paperwork, right? You submit it all electronically and boom, you've got an account. Yep. The second step in the process is to deposit money into that account so you have something to work with. So what are the ways that people deposit money? Well, one way is through a contribution, right? So the tax deadline got extended to July 15th. So right now, people can actually make a contribution for last year, 2019, for their retirement account. So if they haven't made a contribution yet, they can do that. That you just take the money out of your checking account or savings account and you deposit it in your self-directed account. The most common way that we see people fund accounts is through transfers and rollovers, right? So they have an IRA, like I mentioned, at a bank or a brokerage. They move that money over, or they have people will use the term rollover when they're talking about moving money from a company 401k plan over to a self-directed retirement account. So that's another way that they fund it, right? So that's the second step, that you just deposit money in the account. Mm-hmm. And then the third and final step is to direct, right? And that's where you tell Specialized Trust Company, hey, here's what I want to do with my money, right? I want to put it in this deal. I want to buy this property and rent it out. I want, whatever it is that you do, right, or you choose to do is that third and final step. And so it really is that simple. It isn't complicated.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think, it's an unknown thing for a lot of folks, right? But it's so achievable. The people who do understand self-directed IRA, I think a lot of those folks think like, I have to be uber wealthy. I have to have millions of dollars in my retirement to do something like that. It's the secret of, the wealthy getting wealthier, right? That's their thing. But I don't know if a lot of people realize how attainable it is for your average person to be able to take advantage of that. And I think during this time, right, we're all quarantined. It gives everyone the opportunity to really think and map out and figure out what's the next couple of years look like. You know, if I got dinged really bad in the stock market, maybe it's time to have different opportunity. So, you know, I don't know if enough people realize how attainable it is. You know, how easy it is to get. You probably get that a lot, though.
Yeah, well, you know, it's interesting. Yeah, well, you know, what's interesting is that when you look at our client base, you know, and of course we have clients who have multi-million-dollar accounts. We have clients who are starting their very first IRA ever, and they start with a $500 or $1,000 contribution to get started, right? And there's investment strategies at both ends of the spectrum and everything in between. But what I can tell you is that the average rollover transfer into specialized right now is about $100,000, right? So some accounts are more, some accounts are less, but I'd say the average is about $100,000. And so that really represents the folks that you're talking about, right? Your regular everyday person who has accumulated money in a retirement account over a matter of years. They're not particularly pleased, as you said, with what's been going on with it. And by the way, on a side note, interestingly enough, one of the things that we've seen in the stock market is that, you know, there's been a ton of volatility. But the reality is, this is the conversation I'm having with folks right now, is that you've seen a lot of volatility, and the time frame has been collapsed. So you see it very clearly, and you see it in a very real way. But the reality is that's how it always behaves. It's just spread out over a period of time, so people don't realize it as much. It makes planning and wealth building extremely difficult. Right. In fact, I'll tell you right now, I don't know one person who retired on mutual funds. I'm not saying it hasn't happened. I'm just saying I don't know one person personally. And I'll ask people that question. You know, look, I have the conversations every day. People move their money to a self-directed retirement account because they've been doing something for 10 or 20 years, and they're nowhere close to retiring. Yeah. So the reality is that it takes a different approach, and that something different is the self-directed process. And in a market like this, the number one thing that I tell people that you want to do, and there's a lot of changes with the stimulus plan and everything as it pertains to retirement accounts, creates a lot of opportunities for all investors. But the one thing that I tell people is that in this kind of market, you want to preserve your nest egg. Because if you're not in a place that you can step out of that W-2 job, or to where you have the choice to step out of the business, you know, and not work so much in it. I know in my business, right, it takes a lot of work. Right. It takes time. That's the reality of it. And so I don't necessarily want to work that way, right, the rest of my life. I enjoy it now, and I'll always enjoy being involved. But do I want to have to spend all my time? No. And so you've got to preserve your nest egg, particularly in an economy like this, because the second thing we need to do is grow it, obviously. Right. And so it's really hard to grow something if it's going backwards.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are some of the, so one of the, you know, obviously it's easy to self-direct. It's a process you can control. It's something that you know is doable. What are some of like the crazy? There's such great tax advantages to that piece as well. Maybe some of the secret tax pieces that some people don't think about as far as being able to defer or just not pay taxes at all.
Yeah, well, you know, retirement accounts offer a huge opportunity for us in that it solves several problems. So you mentioned taxes, and that's the one that people think about. And right now is the time of year that people often think about it. And it's not usually because it depends on the person. Guys like you and I, right? Anybody who actually owns a business or is an active investor, right? We see the actual dollars we're writing to the IRS, and my tax bill just seems to be going up every single year, which people, CPAs, well, that's what my CPAs say. Oh, it's a good thing that it's going up. I'm like, I'm sorry, I disagree on that one. Okay. You could have bought a Ferrari with what I paid to the government in taxes last year, you know, and I get more use out of the Ferrari, I think. But anyway, so the thing is that the first thing that retirement accounts provide is tax protection. And that can come in a couple of different ways. But one way is, right, you can get a tax deduction. So that's where I say for last year, if you're looking for tax deductions, there's accounts that you can contribute to that you can actually lower your tax bill for 2019. So you can impact that in a positive way. When the money is in the account and it's invested and it's growing and it's generating earnings, you're not taxed on those earnings. So if you think about that from a compounding standpoint, and I could give you numbers, but if you just think about it conceptually from a compounding standpoint, people talk about the power of compounding, but people don't realize how fast you can compound and how much time you can make up for it when you're doing it correctly. When you compound in a tax-free environment, which is a second thing that retirement accounts allow you to do, right? I mean, the money just grows so much more rapidly. The third tax benefit that you can get is, depending upon the type of account you have, you can oftentimes spend that money 100% tax-free. And when I say tax-free, what I mean is there's no income tax on those distributions. By the way, distribution is the term we use, that when you take money from an account to spend and fund your lifestyle, right? That's called a distribution. So when you take a distribution from certain types of accounts, there's no income tax, there's no capital gains tax, there's no tax at all. So from a tax standpoint, one of the huge benefits of retirement accounts is that it's the only way to go from forever taxed to never taxed. The only legal way that I know of personally to go from forever taxed for forever taxed to never taxed. And that's what certain retirement accounts can do for you. So that the tax benefits are huge. I'll mention one other one, because actually I'll mention two quick ones because a lot of people don't talk about these. But the second benefit is asset protection. Okay. And so if you think about it, and you and I both know people, right? And particularly in markets like this. In fact, I'm talking to somebody after this call in a couple hours who just had their entire business wiped out. Right? They are, so that's, we're going to talk about some things, but here's the thing. If that person declares bankruptcy personally, if that individual their business declares bankruptcy, the court and creditors cannot attach a judgment. I'm going to make a general statement here because there are differences between the types of accounts you can have, but the court is not going to be able to attach a judgment to any asset held inside of her retirement account. That is off the table. So the wealth that she's created in her retirement account will be unaffected by her business, by anything she has done personally. It is off the table, which when we talk about preserving your nest egg, there's another way to preserve it, right? You've got to preserve it from creditors, things like that. And then the third benefit that I'll just touch on, there's a lot of benefits, but the third quick one that I'll just mention, and you brought it up, right? Because you and I have, right, we have kids. I have a slew of them. And so the reality is that your IRAs, your retirement accounts are actually a form of a trust. It's a very specialized type of a trust. But when you correctly list those beneficiaries, the great thing about retirement accounts is that it becomes one of the best legacy builders you have, because it bypasses probate and goes directly to your beneficiaries. And so that is huge. As a matter of fact, so I'll mention this. With the quarantine, right? I never watch TV, but I've got the kids. And so we're looking for shows to watch. So what do we start watching? We start watching Tiger King. Now we're on like the third or fourth episode. Okay. Now, if you haven't seen this show, it's hysterical because it's real life. you wouldn't believe that this stuff exists. Like I'm blown away. It's the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. But here's the point. I think it was in episode 3 or 4, spoiler alert. This woman is accused of offing her husband. Right. And and then they go interview the kids. Well, guess where all the money went? Because he didn't use retirement accounts. He held everything in his personal name and whatever. So he apparently, right. Well, we'll just say he disappeared because that's what they can say legally. So he disappears. Where does the money go? To the person that they think made him disappear. Right. Nothing went to the kids. Nothing went to the kids. That's a real problem, right? Things don't always happen. You go to you work your entire life to sustain and build something in a legacy for your family. And then all of a sudden it can just disappear overnight, literally, right? And so there are ways to put in place, again, solve a lot of these problems with, like we said, in 15 minutes, opening an account can solve all these problems. I mean, it's pretty powerful stuff.
Crazy. There's so many benefits, guys. If you're watching this, again, Edwin Kelly, CEO of Specialized IRA Services, self-directed IRA service company, massive financial background in investing and understanding of how to create tax advantage wealth growth over the course of time and actually retire right. So if you guys have questions, put them in the comments. Love to answer them live. Edwin, I got a question. Do you guys still give out this book? Because I've had this on my bookshelf for years, and I think it's one of the best go-to guides for specialized IRAs or for IRA self-directed IRAs.
Yeah. Actually, so that was, I'm working on a new book. I'm working actually on a couple new books, but that is our latest. And if folks want it, we're actually giving it away for free right now with a free consultation. And they can just go to specializedtrustcompany.com, and they can, you can request it off the front page of our website.
Perfect. Maybe Matt, you can throw that in the ticker down below. There's a piece in the back here, which I think I'd love to get into. It's interesting. Private banking, right? Becoming your own private bank. I think that's one of the more interesting variations of what you can do with your retirement. Can you talk about that for a second? Give the folks a little bit of background on that.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is that this current coronavirus, coronavirus has become a catalyst to being able to do many, many things. And one of the things that's happened, because when they passed the stimulus or the relief act, right, there's many things that affected retirement accounts. And so now more than ever, they've given people the opportunity to unlock their retirement accounts and have more access to that money. So as an example, one of the big challenges that we traditionally have had is when we're talking to folks is they say, well, look, all my money's in my company sponsor plan. Can I move it? And typically you need a qualifying event, meaning you have to be over the age of 59 and a half, or you have to be separated from the company. Well, obviously with the layoffs, there's been a lot of people unfortunately separated from their employment. But what that enables them to do in that case is transfer or roll that money out of the plan into a self-directed account. So now they have more access to their money than they actually had before. So that's one thing. The other thing is that if you're an investor looking for private money, and I think this is going to become a very big topic, because I don't know what your experience has been, but I'm talking to investors every day, and we're looking at stuff every day. And when I talk to banks and financial institutions, right, and what I have heard and what I have seen personally is that the banks have stepped back. So many people don't realize that so much of money on the street is Wall Street money. And right now what Wall Street is saying is we don't know how to price risk. I was talking to a guy the other day. He said, it was awesome. He said, I got a $3 million discount on this apartment complex. Yep. He said, go to my traditional lenders. He says, I got a $3 million discount on this apartment complex. And they said, well, the problem is you don't know if you should have got a $12 million discount. And we don't know either. So we're not touching the deal. Yeah. I had another guy I was talking to and working with. They were doing a Section 8 deal. So it's all government, right? Guaranteeing the rents and the rentals income. The lenders backed out at the last minute. They said, go figure it out. So how do you do that when there's no liquidity in the market? Well, the liquidity is in the retirement accounts, because there was over 25 trillion. Okay. So I'll say I get 25 trillion with a T dollars in retirement accounts prior to this whole craziness in March, right? All that money just got unlocked through the stimulus plan. So if you're looking for liquidity, if you're looking for money, if you want to create your own private bank, and the term private bank means, hey, I talk to you, Joe, and I say, Joe, you got a retirement account. I got a deal. How about you lend it to me, right? And I go out and get five other people, that I know, and we all, and they lend their retirement accounts to act as the bank on my deal. That's hence the private bank concept. So it's a really powerful concept, and right now is the biggest opportunity I've ever seen in retirement accounts. As a matter of fact, just to point that out, one of the things that happened is March of this year, right? So I actually had a heads up that this was going to happen back in February, and it was the second Saturday in February that I realized this was going to hit the States. So we went into massive action in the company in February. It started making all kinds of shifts and changes. So by the time they had the first press conference and they announced the quarantine, we were already ahead of this. I mean, as much as you can be in something like this, right? We didn't know what it was going to look like, but we knew something was coming. And so we were as ahead of it as you could be. But March was a record month with new account opens and money transferring into accounts. And this is why, because people in many cases, got access to their money. And the second thing is that they saw the volatility of the stock market and they said, this is going to set me back another 10 years. And so people are looking for the alternative. So this is the biggest opportunity I've ever seen in the private money space, particularly as it pertains to retirement accounts.
So a lot of real estate investors watch the show. Obviously, it's a lot of our base, right? And how can some of them, first of all, if you're in real estate investing and you don't have a self-directed you're crazy. There's we could talk for 3 hours on all the benefits of having your own self-directed. But let's say you're a real estate investor and you're in that space, right? Like I was just on the phone yesterday with Ian Walsh, a good buddy of mine, hard money lenders, and he's a hard money lender, but a lot of the hard money lenders just shrunk up and disappeared, just like you just said, right? A lot of that Wall Street backed money. So if you're a real estate investor who's never borrowed private money through a self-directed, how does that conversation go? Maybe like the highlights, for what you can talk to.
Yeah. So here's what it is at a high level. And people say, well, I'm not an IRA expert. I don't know how any of this stuff works. And so it's super simple, because when I've gone out and funded deals personally, right, here's what I say. So I'll give you what I call my magic words. It's magic because it unlocks money, and it's super simple. When you're talking to someone about what you do or an investment that you're involved in, it's a real simple statement and or question, right? It's you or your retirement account, you or your 401k can make this investment or participate in this investment. I never separate them as an individual from their retirement account. I always interlace those two things, you or your retirement account. And the reason why I do that is because, as you pointed out at the beginning of this episode, right? Most people don't know that you can do this. They have no idea that you can do this, and they're not even thinking about their retirement account if you're talking to them about a real estate investment or any other type of investment, most likely for that matter. So when you ask that, when you plant that seed and you just say it over and over and over again, you or your retirement account can do this, you or your IRA, you or your 401k. After a few times of you saying that, they're like, well, wait a minute, what do you mean my IRA or 401k? And when they say that, you immediately know they have one. So at that point, it's real simple, right? We work with a lot of investors. We give people a relationship manager, single point of contact, if they're out actively raising private money. And it's like, hey, look, I work with a company that can explain the whole process to you, walk you through it. Why don't I connect you, right? And boom, that's it. So literally all you have to know is those words that I just gave you. And as long as you have an established relationship with a custodian like Specialized, then what happens is you don't have to be an expert. You just have to know what you do and work with someone who can help you with that other part, right? And it's really that simple.
Man, let me tell you right now that I don't know if the listeners realize that's a multi-million-dollar golden nugget you just dropped on people. I mean, I'm a huge fan of NLP and trying to plant seeds and control the conversation through kind of dropping those nuggets. I love that. You or your retirement account. I mean, listen, I've raised millions of dollars through self-directed, and I don't think I've ever said that before. So something that's that simple, guys, I think that's a game changer, right? Because a lot of people are interested in investing, and then you have to kind of explain to them all the different vehicles. Here's the magic of retirement. People don't think of it, right? The whole idea is stick it in an account and never look at it again because I'll need it 40 years from now. But the fact is, when you weave it into the conversation the way you just did, I think it's a game changer. That's awesome, man. I appreciate it.
I mean, we don't have to make this stuff. Look, people make things overly complicated, and I'm in a pretty complex business. But if it ain't simple, people don't. I always say a confused mind never invests, right? And so we've got to take people we move people from a place of confusion to clarity, and simple things like that work for everyone.
It's fantastic. Very, very simple, easy, quick takeaway that I almost guarantee you guys it ends up helping you raise a lot more money on the private side because again, you're just clarifying it in their mind while they're thinking like, hey, I need to borrow money. Well, I don't really have that cash available. Oh, maybe I do, right? I think it's a fire takeaway. Edwin, anything
retirement account? They're really not. So you have to, you have to introduce it in the conversation. If you're looking for private money, and by the way, here's the thing that I can tell you is that for most folks, and this is true of my own deals that I funded, as well as most people that I see, most of the money that when people are using private money that I see, I'll say about anywhere from 50 to 60% on average in a transaction. If you're taking in multiple investors, 50 to 60% is IRA money, and the other 50% is non-IRA money. So there's a couple ways you can think about that. One is that if you're not introducing IRA account into the conversation, you end up with half the money. The other way you can think about is that it takes you twice as long to complete your fundraising if you're not introducing the concept of the retirement money. right? And so again, you can save a lot of time and save yourself a lot of work. In fact, if you've never brought the IRA, here, let me give you one more. And I've had people do this and they instantly get money, particularly in a market like this. If you're one of those investors who's already working with private money, but you've never used someone's IRA or you've never introduced them in the conversation, go back to your existing private investors. Don't even worry about contacting one new person. Go back to your existing investors and say, hey, by the way, did you know you could use your retirement account as well to invest in these kinds of transactions? I can't guarantee you, but I can almost guarantee you, just based on all my 23 plus years doing it, you will uncover more money just by going back to your existing people and asking the question.
No doubt. And the funny thing is you say that because I've done it. But like by accident, you're in a conversation and like, hey, I appreciate you in this first deal. I want to get to know. Well, I don't really have any money available right now. Well, maybe your IRA. Oh yeah. And then it's a whole different transition into.
Right.
It's like people don't even think about it. It's like it's separate from them. They don't think about it as that. So I love it, man. Anything that we missed today, Edwin? I want to be respectful of your time. I know we're supposed to be here a half hour and we're just over that mark right now. Anything else that we didn't cover?
You know what? I'll just mention one other thing. There's a lot of things and benefits that came out from the stimulus bill that can help you if you're raising money. It can help you if you have an IRA. And there's a lot of strategies right now that are working that we're sharing with clients and new clients and people who are looking for solutions in a market like this. So I'll just leave it at this instead of getting into all the detail because we're out of time. But, again, if you reach out to one of our experts, they can go over that all with you and talk to you about what those shifts and changes have been and how you might, use that given your current scenario.
And I can attest to that. We have the same guy that we've been on your team that we've been sending deals to for years. Edwin's guys are amazing to talk to. Always there to answer questions for you. Make it easy, make it simple. Edwin, where do we get people to find you? Go right directly to the website.
Yep, just right to the website. And like I said, we're offering a free book, that book free, as well as a free consultation. We usually charge for the consultations because we get into quite a bit of detail. But again, in this market, we're trying to help people and make it easy. So we're giving away a lot of free stuff. In fact, I have a quick start training course that I do live every month. And it's an entire month of training that we typically charge, about $597 for, but for new clients, that's free as well. So there's a lot of free resources available. Just take advantage of them.
It's fantastic. I'm telling you guys, real estate investors, people who want to invest in real estate, anyone who wants to self-direct, go ahead and check out the website below for sure. Guys, get this book, this trail guide. I've been using it for years. I give it to my new investors. I talk to people about self-directed through this book. Edwin Kelly, guys, I appreciate you being on, Edwin. And
awesome,
many years of doing more business together for sure.
Yeah, it's great reconnecting, dude. We got to do this again once this quarantine lifts.
Absolutely.